Most people who don't respect you aren't confused. They're collecting data. Every interruption you allow, every joke you swallow, every time you explain yourself when you didn't need to, they're logging it. And once they learn where your line is or that you don't have one, they adjust their behavior accordingly. Today, I'm going to show you 5 ways to shut that down without yelling, without proving anything, and without becoming someone you're not. One of these methods feels almost invisible, but it's the one that flips the power dynamic instantly. If this is hitting close to home, pause for a second. Ask yourself which of these you've been avoiding. Then, like this video, subscribe, and stay with me, because the fastest way to change how people treat you is to change the signals you don't even realize you're sending. Most people lose respect at the exact moment they start explaining themselves too much, because explanation is often mistaken for clarity when it's actually a signal of self-doubt. When someone challenges you in a subtle way, interrupts your decision, questions your authority, or pushes back without real cause, the nervous system wants to regain control by talking more. You justify your reasoning, add background, provide context, stack logic on top of logic, hoping the other person will finally say, okay, that makes sense. But psychologically, the opposite happens. Over-explaining shifts you from the position of someone who decides into the position of someone who seeks approval. The listener unconsciously feels higher status because you're working to convince them. In behavioral terms, status flows toward the person who requires less validation. Calm authority is concise. It doesn't rush, it doesn't overfill silence. Silence itself becomes leverage because it creates a moment where the other person must process, adjust, or reveal their intent. When you state something once, clearly, and then stop talking, the interaction changes. The pressure moves off you and onto them. This doesn't mean being cold or robotic. It means choosing precision over reassurance. A short statement delivered evenly signals internal alignment. Your nervous system is regulated. You are not defending your existence. You are communicating expectation. People who rely on dominance through testing feel this shift immediately. They either soften, retreat, or escalate. And escalation is useful because it exposes disrespect openly instead of keeping it hidden under politeness. Over-explaining also trains people to keep pushing because they learn that resistance produces more information, more effort, more emotional output from you. When that reward disappears, the behavior loses momentum. This is why high-status individuals rarely explain decisions unless asked sincerely. They assume legitimacy first and clarify second. The moment you adopt that posture, others recalibrate without you ever raising your voice or drawing a line verbally. It's not about saying less to seem mysterious. It's about trusting that your position doesn't need justification to exist. When you speak once and stop, your body language, tone, and timing do the work words usually try to compensate for, and the interaction settles into a different hierarchy where respect is implied rather than negotiated. The second way to handle people who don't respect you is to name the behavior instead of attacking the person, because the human brain reacts very differently to observation than accusation. When you label someone as disrespectful, rude, or inconsiderate, their identity feels threatened and their nervous system shifts into defense mode. At that point, the conversation stops being about behavior and becomes about winning, saving face, or regaining dominance. But when you calmly point out what just happened in neutral, factual language, you bypass ego and trigger self-awareness. Saying something like, "You interrupted me before I finished," or "that comment shifted the tone of the conversation," forces attention onto the action itself, not the character of the individual. This is powerful because most disrespect operates in ambiguity. It hides behind jokes, timing, sarcasm, or plausible deniability. The moment you name the behavior in real time, that ambiguity disappears. Now the person has to choose whether to adjust or double down. Either outcome gives you information and control. The key is delivery. Your tone must be flat, steady, and almost curious, not emotional. Emotion gives them leverage. Neutrality removes it. You are not asking for permission or approval. You are simply marking the boundary of reality. This also communicates that you are paying attention and that patterns won't slip past you unnoticed. People who rely on subtle dominance tests feel exposed by this because their usual tactics stop working. They can't accuse you of overreacting because you didn't react emotionally. They can't accuse you of attacking them because you didn't label them. You just described what occurred. This creates a quiet psychological pressure that often leads to self-correction because humans are wired to maintain social coherence when behavior is made visible. Even if they don't correct themselves immediately, you've set a precedent. The interaction now exists on your terms. Over time, consistently naming behavior trains others to interact with you more carefully. Because they know the moment a line is crossed, it will be calmly illuminated instead of ignored or explosively confronted. Respect grows not from force, but from clarity repeated without drama. The third way to handle people who don't respect you is controlled disengagement, which is often misunderstood as avoidance, but it's really a strategic redirection of energy and attention. When someone repeatedly tests boundaries, challenges your authority, or behaves disrespectfully, the instinct is usually to respond, sometimes aggressively, sometimes defensively, but every reaction reinforces their behavior because it validates that their push elicits an outcome. Controlled disengagement flips that dynamic entirely. By calmly stepping back, shortening responses, or redirecting the conversation without explanation, you remove the reward they are seeking, your emotional investment, your attention, or your effort to prove yourself. Attention is a form of currency, and disrespectful people rely on extracting it unconsciously. When that currency is no longer available, the behavior loses value and patterns of testing begin to collapse. This doesn't mean ignoring someone indefinitely or acting passive-aggressively. It means strategically adjusting your engagement in the moment so that your boundaries are respected without confrontation. The person is confronted not by words or threats, but by the absence of leverage they expected to gain. Silence, delayed responses, or calmly shifting focus sends a signal. Your behavior has consequences, and I control the access you have to me. Humans are highly sensitive to social feedback, and when a pattern they rely on no longer produces the intended result, they either correct themselves, withdraw, or reveal their intent openly. Controlled disengagement also protects your mental and emotional space, because repeated exposure to disrespect without consequence erodes confidence over time. By disengaging selectively and consistently, you preserve your energy while setting a clear, nonverbal standard for how interactions occur. Over time, people who are capable of respect adapt to this standard naturally, and those who are not reveal themselves more quickly, saving you wasted effort and frustration. The power of disengagement lies in its subtlety and intentionality. It communicates authority and control without drama, aggression, or overt confrontation, shifting the social dynamic to one where you are the arbiter of access and engagement and not the other way around. The fourth way to handle people who don't respect you is consistency, because boundaries without consistency are essentially suggestions rather than rules. Many people set limits once or twice, but when the same behavior repeats and goes unaddressed, the message becomes muddled, and those who test boundaries learn that patience and persistence can wear you down. Respect isn't earned from a single display of authority. It's trained over time through predictable patterns of response. When a boundary is crossed, the reaction must be the same every time, calm, controlled, and proportionate, so that the person understands that their actions have consequences that are stable and inevitable. This doesn't mean rigidity or overreacting to minor infractions, but it does mean observing patterns and responding in a way that signals reliability and self-possession. Inconsistent responses create confusion, signaling uncertainty and vulnerability that others can exploit, even unintentionally. Over time, consistent enforcement of boundaries communicates a kind of quiet authority. Your presence is dependable, your standards are clear, and attempts to manipulate or disrespect are unlikely to succeed. People naturally adjust to stability. When they know exactly what will happen if they cross a line, the cost of testing rises, and their behavior often shifts without you needing to escalate. The psychological effect of consistency is powerful because it removes ambiguity, which is where most disrespect thrives. It also reinforces your own internal alignment. Acting consistently reminds you that your boundaries are non-negotiable and that your self-respect doesn't fluctuate based on others' actions or moods. Those who fail to adapt to this consistent framework reveal themselves quickly, allowing you to invest attention and energy only where it is reciprocated, and those who adjust often become more cooperative, reliable, and respectful. In essence, consistency is the engine that converts boundaries into an unspoken social contract, one that communicates power, authority, and self-respect far more effectively than words, threats, or emotional reactions ever could. The fifth way to handle people who don't respect you is internal alignment, which is the foundation of all effective boundary setting, because respect starts from within, not from the reactions of others. Many people struggle with disrespect because deep down they haven't fully decided what they will and won't accept, or they doubt their own value. This uncertainty leaks out in subtle ways: hesitation in tone, apologetic phrasing, over-explaining, or inconsistent enforcement of limits, and people pick up on it instantly. Internal alignment means having a clear, non-negotiable understanding of your worth, your principles, and the standards you hold for how others interact with you, and then consistently acting in accordance with that understanding. When your behavior matches your self-perception, it creates an almost imperceptible but powerful signal to others. You are grounded, self-assured, and non-negotiable in ways that can't be argued with or coerced. People sense this energy intuitively, and it forces them to recalibrate their approach. Either they rise to meet your standard, or they reveal themselves as unworthy of your attention. Internal alignment also protects your emotional state because you no longer tie your self-esteem to someone else's approval or validation. Disrespect loses its power when it no longer triggers doubt or overreaction. Instead, you respond from a place of certainty rather than defensiveness. This doesn't mean you become rigid, cold, or detached. It means that your internal compass dictates your response, and others can't sway you with manipulation, testing, or passive aggression. Over time, internal alignment trains people how to treat you even more effectively than rules or boundaries alone, because it communicates that respect is not something you negotiate or give away. It is the natural consequence of interacting with someone who knows their value and refuses to compromise it. It creates a social gravity where your presence demands consideration, not because you enforce it externally, but because it radiates from within. In this way, the strongest defense against disrespect is not confrontation, clever tactics, or verbal mastery, but the quiet, unshakable authority of someone who has fully aligned with their own worth and communicates it consistently through action, energy, and presence.